Now we'll move on to the next speaker, G.V. Shivakumar ji. He is another colleague of ours at INDICA Academy. He is the scholar in residence and consulting editor of our online magazine called INDICA Today. Shivakumar GV is an IT professional in the domain of learning and development with a deep interest in Bharatiya Sanskriti. He is proud to be part of INDICA fraternity as a scholar in residence and consulting editor for INDICA Today. He is the curator of a book, Arya, an anthology of Vedic women. You are able to see that book in his background. That book, the cover of which you are able to see, Arya. Please show the book. Yeah, that is a recent anthology that is making ripples in the book reading circles. There is a lot of traction the anthology has received. Arya, an anthology of Vedic women, and published by INDICA Academy. Through Arya, he hopes to create new cultural conversations on the glorious women of Bhāratavarṣa. He is also one of the authors of Unsung Valor, Forgotten Wars of Kurukshetra, curated by Sai Swarupa Iyer for INDICA. As an INDICA scholar, he studies Indic civilizational thought to create frameworks for application in contemporary times. He writes on Mahābhārata, Puranas, civilizational thought, and anchors Kannada content at INDICA Today. He is a storyteller, imagining narratives that appeal to audiences of diverse spectrums. He is a BE graduate from National Institute of Technology, Surat, and an MTech from IIT Mumbai. He is greatly inspired by the rivers of India, Saraswati in particular. So over to you, Shivakumar.
Dhanyavad, Dr. Nagaraj. Nice to meet you after a long time. And Koti ji, can you kindly put my presentation, please? Namaste. It's a short presentation on the life of Bheeshmacharya. Many of us know that Bheeshmacharya goes through a phenomenal number of challenges in his life. There are lots of, that's why you have a lot of Dharma-related conversations that Bhishma has with Yudhishthira and then with Vidura and earlier with Satyavati and so on and so forth. In this presentation, I will focus on a small number of them so that we can keep a focus on a few, and with a templatized way of application that can be portrayed to other situations also. The objective will be to identify how Bhishma goes about making those decisions and what are the consequences finally, and what is the drift of Bhishma's dharma decision making process. And we will talk about 4 specific situations. Can we go to the next slide, Kotiji? So here is a small summary of Bhishma's life. This is not exhaustive and elaborate. This is handpicked just to make a specific point. We all know that after birth, Bhishma grows up with Shantanu and then goes to Ganga, and then Ganga brings him up under the tutelage of the illustrious Vasishtha, Angirasa, and then Brihaspati, and Shukracharya, and also Parshurama. So while we know that he was the Shishya of Parshurama, he was also the Shishya of Vasishtha for Vedas, and Brihaspati and Shukracharya for Niti. And finally, after that, he comes back, and then Bhishma, Shantanu falls in love, and then Bhishma has to take those pratigna. Kotiji, the slide is a little blur. Hope it's visible. Okay. So then Bhishma refuses the throne after his pratigna, and then after Vichitravirya dies, once again he has the option of getting married and ascending to the throne, which he refuses. And subsequently, you have the Amba episode, and then the fight with Parshurama, and then he has to choose between Dhritarashtra and Pandu, and finally he has to choose between Duryodhana and Yudhishthira, and then Pandavas return after winning Draupadi. Then there are some decisions to be made. Then Dhritarashtra decides to invite Pandavas for the Dyuta. Then there are some decisions, and then there are dharma conflicts at the time of disrobing of Draupadi, and then there is a second Dyuta immediately after that, and after that Bhograhana, then end of Ajnatavasa. There are some phenomenal Udyoga Parva conversations between Bhishma and so many others, and then there is finally the death of Bhishma in the war. In each of this, there are certain Dharmasankata situations. Dharmasankata situations is basically it appears to be just from all sides, and then how do you make a decision in favor of some? In this, I have star marked the ones that we are going to discuss today in this presentation. We'll discuss the Pratigna part. Then we will discuss the conversation between him and Satyavati, after Vichitravirya dies, and then the Amba episode, and then the disrobing of Draupadi. We will spend a little extra time in the Amba episode and in the disrobing of Draupadi episode. We will not touch upon others. We'll also discuss the fight with Parashurama. Kotiji, next slide, please. Okay. So this is the Bhishma Pratigna episode. So let's see what happens in a small summary. One fine day, Shantanu is on a vihara, and then he meets Gandhavati or Matsyagandhi or Satyavati. He instantly falls in love. The episode is very clearly described as Shantanu being, overcome by kama. That is, there is a moha angle to it. Of course, he is a dharmic king, so he goes and meets Dasharaj, seeking her hand. Dasharaj places his condition very clearly, that he wants the children of Satyavati to be the future kings. Shantanu goes into a depression, primarily because the dharma within him is refusing to, deny Bhishma the opportunity, but he's not able to overcome his, desire for Satyavati either. So he's in a deep conflict. Then finally Bhishma realizes that there is depression, and then goes and meets Shantanu, and then the conversation is a beautiful conversation. Shantanu is unable to clearly say that he has fallen in love and it is his desire to get married. He indirectly says that what will happen if Bhishma dies. There is no no more children, and he beats around the bush about having the importance of having more children and so on and so forth, and tries to create a dharma platform for his desire, which is quite weak. Although he quotes a lot of old scriptures and so on and so forth in favor of his old sayings of the Shishtajana, saying that the Shishtajana say that having more children is important and so on and so forth and all that. But it is very clear to Bhishma that this is not the reason, and Bhishma reflects upon it very explicitly that no, this is not the reason. There is some other reason. But it is interesting that Shantanu tries to create a dharma defense for his desire, which is how all dharmic kings would be. So Bhishma speaks to his favorite minister, and the minister reveals the true reason that he went and met Dasharaj, but Dasharaj could not. He has after that something happened. Then after that, Shantanu is in depression. But definitely, the angle is that he sought a girl in marriage. So then Bhishma speaks to Dasharaj, and that conversation is another interesting conversation. Many things we don't realize, and Dasharaj makes 2 points very clearly. He is very well aware that Satyavati is the daughter of Uparichara-Vasu, and he has had conversations with him. And Uparichara-Vasu had clearly told Dasharaj that the girl is meant for Shantanu. In fact, the version of Mahābhārata that I have very clearly mentions that Devarshi Asita had sought Satyavati in marriage, which is also there in Sri Devroy's version, although Gita Press has removed that shloka, and Dasharaj would have rejected the offer and says that I am waiting for Shantanu. And he says that she is meant for Shantanu, but then I am insecure that what will happen to the children, because you are the greater man, you are going to be the king, and what if there is a persecution? So the innate insecurity and that weakness that comes from not having the right background emerges in Dasharaj. So Bhishma makes 2 pratignyas. First, he says that I'm not going to be the king. So Dasharaj is not happy because Dasharaj says that I am fine, or you will get married and you will have children, and then there will be conflict once again. So he wants to be doubly sure. So at that time, Bhishma makes his second pratigna that he will never marry, and he will be in the service of the Hastinapura kingdom forever. And that is when he is dubbed as Bhishma, and he becomes from Devavrata he becomes Bhishma. And so here there is a Dharmasankata. So how do we analyze this Dharmasankata? Let's apply the Purushartha framework. For Dasharaj, it is his kama, definitely his ambition, his artha, because he's been waiting for that for a long time. It's his security. It is his security that makes him ask for those things. His dharma, because Uparichara-Vasu has told him, and it's meant for it, and there's a partial dharma angle to it. For Shantanu, it is an absolute pure desire. It's artha because partially if the kama is not fulfilled, then you are shaken in your shaky situation. You can't be a good king. He tries to create a dharma platform, but it's a very weak dharma explanation that he gives to it. For Hastinapura, let's assume that Hastinapura is an entity which also has its own Purushartha. Its desire is to see the best king, that is Bhishma, that is violated. And its Shantanu being happy may serve its immediate artha, but its long-term artha, that's why the low green shade, long-term artha is definitely hurt. Its dharma is definitely hurt because it's not going to have the best king, or it at least not guaranteed that the children of Satyavati are going to be better than Bhishma. For Bhishma, how does Bhishma make the decision? That is important. For Bhishma to please his father, who has gone through enormous, suffering in life, it clearly says that for 36 years, Shantanu did not look at women. Shantanu lived life of dharma, and for a change, he's having his own desire coming in the forefront, and Bhishma does not want to deny him for all that he's gone through. And for him, that renunciation will take him towards his own moksha faster. But how does, Bhishma decide whether this is the larger dharma or not? It's very clear that in the conversation, the description, Bhishma takes a decision in favor of Shantanu's, well-being and Hastinapura's immediate security. Because if Shantanu is not in the right state of mind, he won't be a king, and you can't take him out as a king until he's alive, and that's not good for Hastinapura. And Bhishma decides to forsake what he sees as the future of Hastinapura, and he thinks that he will anchor anyway, he will protect the kingdom of Hastinapura. This is how Bhishma goes about making it. Fundamentally, he makes a decision in favor of Hastinapura's immediate artha and Shantanu's kama. But it did prove to be costly because he could not anchor it beyond a certain point, as we see how entropy of dharma kept on increasing progressively. This is the first Dharmasankata and its resolution and its consequence. Next slide, please. Yeah. So then, as expected, immediately it collapsed sooner than Bhishma would have thought, because Chitrangada died early because of his extraordinary overconfidence. Whereas Vichitravirya, in spite of whatever happens, died because of excessive indulgence in material life. Satyavati asks Bhima to take over, and she tells both things, that should get married, should also take over the administration as a king. The reason why she says that is already the context in which Bhishma has taken that war has ended, because it was in favor of Chitrangada and Vichitravirya. Both of them are not there. So the need for his pratigna itself is not there, and it's right for him to break. Bhishma refuses, because for him, the Satyavachana once broken cannot be, once said, cannot be taken back. So there is the Dharmasankata over here. What is more important? So Bhishma refuses, and then Bhishma suggests Niyoga. It's a long conversation between Satyavati and Bhishma, and both try to convince each other that there is dharma in taking. The summary of it is that for Bhishma, the vrata dharma is extremely important. That is, so what happens if he breaks his vow? What are the consequences on his own spiritual journey, as well as breaking a truth spoken? What is the impact of it on the society? Will people also be less truthful? Those are the concerns that Bhishma has, because the Kshatra dharma is not just for the self, but also for the society. But for Satyavati, that is less important. But the continuation of the kingdom and the overall dharma, not just of the spoken word, of everything being in balance. If the king itself is weak, everything, no other vrata is of any consequence. So that is her concern. Both are valid concerns. So the Dharmasankata here is, should Bhishma ascend the throne or not? For Bhishma, it's a violation of his own kama. It's a violation of his own dharma, artha, dharma. And, from the personal dimension, nothing was falling in place. It was only for the sake of Hastinapura. But in Satyavati's case, it was her desire. It would have meant stability for her. It would have meant stability for, her own dharmic pursuit, and her own, she could have renounced much, much earlier. And for Hastinapura too, it was its desire that Bhishma take over. So in this case, there's absolute, contrast between the Purushartha expectations of all others and Dharma. And once again, Bhishma takes a decision in favor of Vyashti Dharma, that is his own Dharma, over Samashti Dharma. So, in contrast, you can see what Krishna does. Krishna takes a vow that he will not use, he will not wield weapon in Kurukshetra. And when Arjuna was refusing to wield weapon against Bhishma, Krishna had no hesitation to break his pratigna and come back and, fight Bhishma. And then he runs and he warns Arjuna that if you do not wield the weapon properly against Bhishma, I will back. It's a very touching episode on day 2 and day 9 of Kurukshetra war. So it's in strong contrast. Sri Krishna always took a decision in favor of Samashti Dharma and not Vyashti Dharma. Whereas, the Kshatriya perspective of life was always a little bit on the side of, Vyashti Dharma. And then there were consequences, as we saw. There was Niyoga. The Niyoga was only very partially successful, as Satyavati truly feared that, you have the best man, and why should we think of creating a future when you have the best man? Next slide, please. Kotiji? Yeah. Thanks. So before this, something would have happened, which is not narrated in the Adi Parva. It comes, very later in the Udyoga Parva. Sorry for the wrong mention here. It's not Sabha Parva, Dyuta Parva. It is Udyoga Parva. So what happens is Bhishma carries away the Kashi princesses who were about to go through the Swayambara. Kings of entire Bhāratavarṣa would have been there. And Bhishma defeats all the Kshatriyas there while taking Amba, Ambalika and Ambika. In particular, Salva, who is interested in Amba, in turn, Amba is also interested in Salva. They take, Salva comes up to fight with Bhishma, and Salva meets a very bad defeat, and Bhishma spares his life because that's a Swayambara context and not a true kingdom battlefield. And then when they go back, Amba and Ambalika, initially Amba, Ambalika, Amba are very concerned if they are to marry Bhishma, because Bhishma is already quite elderly, if not old, and there's a significant age gap between them. And then when they learn that they have to marry Vichitra Virya, Ambika and Ambalika become happy and they accept the marriage proposal. Whereas Amba at that time reveals that she's already in love with Salva, and she would like to go to Salva. On his good part, Bhishma thinks that that is the right thing, so he does not press the Kshatra angle at that time, and he consults Satyavati, he consults Ritvijas and all the elders of the Kuru Sabha, and then lets Amba go. Unfortunately, Salva refuses to marry Amba. The conversation is very heart-wrenching. Amba tries to convince Salva that, even when Bhishma carried her away, Amba was always, thinking only of Salva. Salva makes a comment that you went away happily. So Amba says, no, I did not go away happily. I was crying all the time, but I did not know what was happening and could not speak to, Bhishma at that time. In fact, there's one shloka where she says, the only mistake that I made was I did not jump off from Bhishma's Ratha and run away towards Salva. I guess if
Shivakumar
in the forest and requests that she be allowed to perform tapas in the forest. But then all the tapasvis, they tell that no, that is not possible for a young Kumari, that to a Rajakumari like you, who is in your prime of your life. You will not be able to go through the hardship of tapas, and hence it is right for you to go back to your parents. And Amba refuses to go back to her parents because she tells that I will go through a lot of humiliation, and I don't want to go through that. It's this is not relevant for this presentation, but it's important how sensitively the tapasvis of the forest treat Amba. For people who want to draw sociological conclusions, the entire environment of the forest of the tapasvis and sages and their conversations with Amba, that's another study matter that no one can do. They're all very sensitive and they want to ensure that Amba's situation is resolved. Nobody judges Amba. Finally, Amba meets a tapasvi, a Rajarshi called Putravahana, and incidentally, Putravahana is the Matamaha. He is the maternal grandfather of Amba, and he decides to take Amba's case and ensure justice for Amba. And then he says that, we will, I know Parashurama very well, and we will seek Parashurama's help to resolve this matter. Then, after a while, Akritavarana, a close associate of Parashurama, comes. Another conversation ensues, and all of them decide that we will seek Parashurama's help. He will ensure that Amba has the right resolution. So here the key thing is, what should Amba do next? Amba wants revenge. At this point in time, while all the stages are trying to resolve and ensure that Amba has the rightful place in life going forward, Amba is, hell-bent on revenge. So finally, a long thing happens. Parashurama comes in. Parashurama is very wary of fighting Bhishma. While Amba wants Parashurama to fight Bhishma, Parashurama is, trying to resolve the matter. He tells Amba that, see, I cannot carry a wheeled weapon just like that. If Bhishma refuses to heed my words, then I can wield a weapon. At the same time, Bhishma has defeated all Kshatriyas at Kashi. So I have another reason to fight Bhishma, but I won't do that. I will first force him to listen to me. And he doesn't tell what is that, words that he's going to tell Amba, Parashurama. So Parashurama tells, you have to parigraha Amba. But that means to either you marry her or, one of your brothers, Vichitravirya, has to marry her. So Bhishma flatly refuses. He doesn't even recognize the proposal as for his own. And he just says Vichitravirya, she's already rejected Vichitravirya and gone. She has somebody else in mind. Hence, it's not right for her to marry Vichitravirya. And when Parshurama further presses that you should marry because you are the one who has created this situation. So Amba's point is that for my situation, whether Salva rejected me or not is less important. It's Bhishma who abducted me from the Swayamvara. It may be Kshatriya Dharma. It's allowed to be done, but that's a lower Dharma. And he has now created this crisis for me. So I want revenge. She doesn't even want resolution. She wants revenge. Parashurama is very clear that I or Vichitravirya cannot marry her. For my pratigna. 2, she is not the right person to marry. She already has somebody else in mind. So finally, Parashurama says, you have to fight me. And a long battle happens. I have summarized it in a very short way. But I can tell you that the number of Dharmasankatas that are there in this episode are just mind-boggling number of Dharmasankatas. And I have just reduced it to 2, whether Bhishma should marry Amba or not. And, number 2 is whether Bhishma should fight Parashurama or not. So long, conversations happen whether Bhishma, because after all, Bhishma is the Shishya of Parashurama. And Parashurama is a Brahmana sage. And Bhishma is a Kshatriya. Is that even an equal fight? Is that even an allowed fight? And all those conversations happen. Finally, the way, once again, Bhishma takes the decision is, in favor of his Vyashti Dharma. He says that I have taken a pratigna and I am not going to violate it for whatever reasons. There can be consequences. So Bhishma says, if I end up marrying Amba, if I parigraha Amba, then my desires are hurt, my artha is hurt, and my own personal dharma is hurt. And whether it leads to, a larger good in terms of my renunciation, I don't know. Whereas for Amba, it is now more than her kama. It is her security, because right now she is hurt. And she doesn't know what is the resolution that will ensure her way forward. Because, the right path is not in front of her. So for her, the first thing, is to defeat the man. If the person, if there is a marriage on Hastinapura's side, at least she is able to carry forward the Pativrata Dharma. So she uses that word. I am denied my Pativrata Dharma. For Hastinapura, it's a dicey situation because, if any marriage, if Amba is taken back, whether, the offsprings are going to be sustaining Hastinapura is not clear, because Amba's personal psychological situation is such that, what will be the future that Amba will create is absolutely not clear, because she is full of anger. She is unable to decide between a resolution and revenge. She is full of revenge, and so on and so forth. So Bhishma, in that situation, takes the decision in favor of his Vyashti Dharma over the Vyashti Dharma of Amba. He knows he is ending up in a disaster because he knows at the heart that his decision to abduct has created this crisis. So he takes, his own favor, and consequences we know. And, that is the beauty of Mahābhārata. While the personal dharma is followed, an act of personal dharma alone can create such a adharma imbalance, and that will have its consequences in the form of Amba doing tapas later and then becoming Shikhandi and coming back to kill Bhishma. So that is the metaphor crafted. It is not that Bhishma took the best, perfect decision, but he took a decision that he thought was best in the immediate, knowing fully the consequences of the adharma angle that is overflowing, and we will come back and hit him later. Similarly, he fights Parashurama because, the moment Parashurama has wielded his weapon against him, the Kshatra has entered Parashurama, and he can fight him, and especially more so because Parashurama seems to be, pushing Bhishma to, take a path of adharma according to Bhishma, because, the artha that Amba represents, he uses the word artha. Artha that Amba represents for Hastinapura is daisy or not clear, and hence if I pushing me to take that action is adharma. So he gives a beautiful decision making framework. But he knows that there will be a disaster because the original act, Amba says, without even asking me what my preference is, he abducted me. So Bhishma has no answer for that. And this is it's a long episode, and it's full of very beautiful conversations between various people. It's a beehive of Dharmasankata conversations. It comes in Udyoga Parva and has many chapters associated with it. Next slide, please. Kotiji, next slide.
Yeah, I think it's last slide. It is not moving. 1 minute, please.
There was one more slide. Let me try to project that then. The fourth slide is that of Draupadi. It's there, no? Sixth slide. This is the most famous of all episodes, and already I've been 1 second I lost it. So Duryodhana then calls Draupadi Dasi, and Vikarna protests. Karna insults Draupadi for marrying 5 men. Dushasana then, and he asks Dushasana to disrobe Draupadi. Dushasana brings, and all that happens. Then Krishna saves Draupadi. At that time, Draupadi asks quite a number of tough questions to entire Sabha and to Bhishma. The summary of all those questions are, 3, which are well known. 1, should Bhishma have intervened before Dushasana began to disrobe Draupadi? 2, could Dharmaraj have pledged Draupadi after he himself losing? As a corollary, was Draupadi a Dasi? Interesting thing is that the only conversation that happens is on whether could Dharmaraj have pledged Draupadi or not, and whether Draupadi was a Dasi or not. Nobody has a doubt that the disrobing was wrong, but nobody thought that they should have intervened, ignoring everything else. So the whole conversation is on the technicality of whether, Dharmaraj could have pledged or not, as Abhinav Agarwal already, very clearly mentioned. So I won't further repeat that. Among all the episodes where Bhishma is talking about Dharmasankata and the resolution of Dharma, the fertility of Dharma, this is one episode where Bhishma's response is highly untechnical and full of confusion, very clearly saying that Bhishma got entangled in the questions of technicality, and and when the honor of a woman was at stake, everybody, including the great Bhishma, were caught in technical understanding whether it decision that was right or not, rather than just merely intervening as Krishna did, or as Vikarna did, or as even Vidura. Vidura stands up each time and says this is wrong. Others are not able to take that position. So in this case, the confusion of his Yashti Dharma, that is his personal Dharma is one is he has to wait for the Hastinapura king to give him his instructions. 1. Two, he's the Vyashti Dharma of, Dharmaraj, whether he has the right to pledge before, after, or whatever. So Bhishma, being a very, very Vyashti Dharma man, got stuck in calculating Vyashti Dharmas, and his Samashti Dharma of Hastinapura and the long-term Dharma, he loses sight of it. And this is one occasion where you say that, where Bhishma says, I'm unable to decide. Hardly ever does Bhishma say. In all the previous Dharmasankata cases, he brings textual references, logic, and everything, and very clearly says, this is how I'm going to do, irrespective of consequences. But in this particular case, this is one Dharmasankata where it is clear that it is the inability to make a decision. And that is the power of the Dyuta and the Sabha, that new Sabha that was built, and the charm that Shakuni placed on the minds of everybody, that they could not even compute the Dharma, that they were all so very well trained. So these are 4 representative cases of Dharmasankata in Bhishma's life. There are several, and in all other cases, Bhishma takes very clear decisions. Subsequently, after this, he resolves every Dharmasankata situation very, very well. But the damage that was caused in Amba's case, where he could not, factor in Amba's Dharma, and here he could not factor in Draupadi's Dharma as well as the larger Dharma of a kingdom itself, and those 2 decisions, became very costly for Hastinapura. But Bhishma is very clear that in spite of all this, he is an upholder of the scriptural dharma, or the Vyashti dharma of individuals and the Varna. This is how things happen in Mahābhārata. Thank you all. If there are any questions, we could take if there is any time.
There was a question about your first slide. Can you just bring back your first slide?
Kotiji?
There's the anonymous attendee. He calls himself the anonymous attendee. He is unhappy that you are not projecting Bhishma in a positive way. He thinks that your first slide has projected him, downvoted him. And there was a conversation between me and this anonymous attendee, and the final message now from him is the speaker thinks Bhishma was confused about Dharma. Then why did Krishna himself ask Yudhishthira to seek guidance from Bhishma about Dharma in Shanti Parva? So,
yeah, it's a good question. That's an important question. See, Mahābhārata itself is very clear. Like in the case of Pratigna being broken, the Krishna was very, very clear that he could break the Pratigna when needed. The failures of Bhishma and Drona are happening at a borderline. Those are difficult things. What Mahābhārata is trying to project is it is not a negative portrayal of Bhishma. It is to say that in these extraordinary situations, when the best will find it very difficult to take a good decision, and mortals like us will struggle even more. So these situations are there as guidelines for us as to how the best can falter. Mahābhārata itself is very clear that there is a consequence in the form of Amba. If Bhishma's decision was perfect, the consequence of Amba would not have been there. If Bhishma's decision, Hastinapura was denied the great king, and the Yuga did not result in appropriate result, as we all very, very clearly know. So, in fact, in Adi Parva, there are very many beautiful stories that clearly demonstrate how in those decisions, other situations, other took different decisions. So if you read entire Mahābhārata in entirety, then it's very clear that these these consequences were there. And that's not to put down Bhishma, obviously, but it is to say that the greatest of the great, if they are calculating Vyashti Dharma, then they will miss the point in a Kuru Sabha, even when a honor of a lady is at stake. The metaphor of the Kavya itself is very clear, so I don't have to draw my own conclusions.